I can bypass almost all of my competition. I mean, literally, in some cases, I have absolutely no one competing against me. And what I'll do is I will go to the seller and I will say, I have an idea. Rather than me offering you $100,000 or 150,000 under what you want, what if we partner? And what we'll do is this, we'll do a joint venture. So I will come in, it won't cost you a dime. I will spend my money on all of the repairs. I will take care of getting the work done. I will list the property, market it, and sell it. And at the end, after we're able to sell for close to full price, we will do a split.
David, thank you for joining me for our Thought Leader Spotlight series. I'm your host, Matt Camp, head of partnerships for DealMachine. On these, we really like to shine a spotlight on industry experts like yourself to hear your inspiring stories and educate our audience on, the lessons that you've learned over your career. So really excited today to welcome on David Oldenburg. He's a renowned national keynote speaker, real estate investor, and been involved in real estate for nearly 30 years. Involved in everything from flipping, wholesaling, lending, private money, buying and holding, all kinds of, pretty much any niche within real estate, it seems like. So excited to have you on. I know you've had over 5,000 transactions in real estate. You founded a 3,000 plus member meetup in Northern California for real estate investors. And then you've been a former CEO yourself of a 60-person mortgage company. So welcome on, David.
It's great to be here. I mean, this is a great opportunity. I know a lot of the people that might end up watching this are probably people that will benefit greatly from some of the things that we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, and I love the stuff that you put out on, if you go to flippingacademy.com, it'll redirect to your YouTube content, but you put out great stuff there as well. So I'll make sure we link to that as well. And people can follow up with you that way too, David. But to kind of begin with, if you don't mind, I know I read a little bit about your background, but could you maybe talk a little bit more about your personal story and especially your journey within real estate investing?
Well, I started in real estate around 1989, 1990. I decided I was actually working as a paramedic in the state of California, and I wanted a way to make more money. I actually wanted a way to make unlimited money if I would work really hard, and I couldn't decide what to do. And my mom said to me, I think you'd be a great realtor. And I thought, gosh, Mom, I know nothing about real estate. And so I ended up taking a class back then. This is before the internet or anything else. I had to go to the college, take a 6-month, 1-semester class, real estate principles. I became a licensed real estate agent around 1990. And I decided initially to get into mortgage lending. So I worked as a lender for a lot of years, then became a realtor, then a broker. And that's how I kind of launched in the early days into my real estate career.
Yeah. And I know you talk on all kinds of things focused on real estate, everything from, how to find money, how to structure deals, how to find deals, all of that. But I think one really, really interesting thing that I've heard you speak about in the past is this idea of joint venturing with a seller and really essentially eliminating the competition when you go through that. So I'd love to start there, if you don't mind, just because I think it's a great concept to bring up to our audience and maybe talk them through the idea behind this and how to pitch it really to sellers.
It's a great topic, and probably the most valuable thing that you can learn if you're newer or even a medium producer in the real estate investing world. The biggest challenge that we have when we get into real estate investing is we can't find our first deal. And what ends up happening is that, and I'm lucky, I should say I'm fortunate, because I'm out there speaking on stage to sometimes hundreds of people almost every month with my real estate investing group. And unfortunately, there's a sad statistic, and that is about 90% of the people that come to my meetings a year later are no longer coming. And that 90% attrition rate, I believe it's not because people lack motivation or lack willingness to learn. It's because they never find their first deal. And so they get frustrated, they get burnt out, and they just move on. And so one of the exciting things about being here today is that my favorite strategy, which is joint venturing with sellers, actually goes hand in hand with DealMachine.
Mhm.
And so I think it's kind of a good fit to talk about this. When I say partnering with sellers, I mean just that. What I find is that most people lose deals because they go out, let's just say they're driving for dollars. Let's take that example. So they're using DealMachine. They go out, they look at a house and it needs some work, and they say, man, this is going to be the perfect house. They use DealMachine. They end up finding out the information, making contact with the seller. The seller talks to them and says, I'd love to sell my house. And then the wholesaler or flipper gets all excited and they say, okay, they crunch all their numbers and they come back to the seller and they say, all right, I'll give you $300,000. But the seller really wants $400,000. And the reason the seller wants 400,000 is because they've looked at Zillow, they've looked at what their neighbors are selling for down the street, and they believe in their mind they can sell for a lot more than 300 or 250. So I learned a long time ago that I can bypass almost all of my competition. I mean, literally, in some cases, I have absolutely no one competing against me. And what I'll do is I will go to the seller and I will say, I have an idea. Rather than me offering you $100,000 or 150,000 under what you want, what if we partner? And what we'll do is this, we'll do a joint venture. So I will come in, it won't cost you a dime. I will spend my money on all of the repairs. I will take care of getting the work done. I will list the property, market it, and sell it. And at the end, after we're able to sell for close to full price, we will do a split.
Yeah, love it.
I stopped there because I figured I've been talking so long. In case you had a question about that part of it, I should answer it. Otherwise, I'll keep going.
No, that's great. I mean, I'm curious on kind of identifying those opportunities, because I know you mentioned like, hey, a lot of times it'll be somebody who maybe they have been pitched a ton by other wholesalers or other investors, and they've been constantly lowballed. And that's where the frustration comes in.
Right.
So how do you identify that opportunity to know like this seller might be open to this type of creative split?
Well, the easiest way to know that they're willing to accept a joint venture is if they don't accept your lowball offer. So
Fair.
in other words, I always say this, start out with the offer that makes you the most money and is the easiest for you. And if you're a wholesaler, that might mean that, using the example we just gave, where the seller thinks it's worth 400, or maybe it is worth 400 with a little bit of work, and you're able to go in and maybe offer 300 or 275 as a wholesaler. If you can get the seller to accept that, that's your deal. In other words, you do the deal. Now we'll talk a little bit later about why you might not want to go that route. Why you might want to actually buy that property and make it a fast flip or a wholesale deal. But let's say you're a wholesaler, that's mainly what you want to do. You have no desire to have ownership of the property. Then if you can get the seller to accept your offer, great. But more oftentimes than not, let me tell you what I hear. I'll get done speaking at an event, and usually 25 or 30% of the people at an event will want to say hi to me afterward. So there'll usually be a line of 30, 40 people that'll want to talk to me after I get done speaking. Most of the time, it's newer people, and they constantly come up to me and ask the same questions. And one of the most common questions I get is, Dave, I've been out trying to find deals. I keep finding deals, but I can't get any of my deals accepted. I still have yet to do my very first deal.
And that split, is that kind of like your first recommendation to them? Like, is that where you're typically seeing success, or what are kind of all of the tools in the toolbox that you kind of share with them at that point?
I always want to increase my odds. And the more opportunities that you have for the seller, the more options that you have for the seller, the more likely they are to accept something that you offer. If your only option is offering them way under market to get the deal so that you can wholesale it and make some money, that does work. I mean, we all know that wholesaling works. We all know that flipping works. But the problem is, what are the percentages? How often does it work? Because what I find is that, let's say I take 10 really good leads, and I found 10 houses, and they need work, and I'm trying to get those deals and make them wholesale deals or make them flips. Let's say from my experience that only a couple of those might work as a wholesale deal or a flip. But if I go into the people that, fail to work as a wholesale deal or a flip, and I say, how about another option? Would you be willing to partner with me, and I can make it financially advantageous to you? And it won't cost you anything, which is key. I'm amazed at how many deals I'm able to resurrect, or how many deals that were dead I'm willing to all of a sudden, bring them to life, and in some cases, not all, but in some cases, make more than what I would have made had I purchased the property with my low offer.
Yeah. Yeah. And then do you think, I know you said the paperwork around those deals are a little bit, a little bit different. Can you talk about how to properly structure that, and how to do that on your own, in a way that you're not going to set yourself up for any kind of pitfalls down the road?
Well, I'm in California, and everybody sues everybody in California.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know what state you're in, or what laws you have to abide by in your state, but I'll tell you what I do in California. In California, I use a very simple one-page joint venture agreement. And it's simple. It basically just says my name and the seller, and that we're agreeing to enter into a joint venture to rehabilitate the property and to ultimately sell it and hopefully make a profit. And then I just, underneath there, I have the terms. Sometimes it's only 3 or 4 terms. Sometimes it might be 10 or 15, depending on how complex the deal is. But I put everything into writing, everything that I'm going to do, everything that I expect from the seller. I put what goals we have, because I want that in writing. I don't want a seller that comes back and says, well, I thought we were going to make 100,000 on this deal, when that was never an option. We were, best case, we were hoping to make the seller say 30,000 or 40,000. We want that to be in writing. I also put contingency plans in writing. In other words, I put right in the joint venture what we're going to do if the property doesn't sell, what we're going to do if the market drops, what we're going to do if the seller decides they want to keep their house. All the things that can come up, I put in. And knock on wood, so far, I have never had an issue. I've never had to go to court. I've never been sued. I have had a couple of times where I've had to give a little more at the end in order to make someone happy and make them continue along with the deal. But I find that these deals work really well. And I've also consulted hundreds of people, other investors, on how to do this. And as far as I know, virtually all of those have worked the same way.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. Are there any, on those contingencies, are there any specifics, like specific lessons learned from that? Of, if you, like, for example, you said if the market drops, like in that scenario, do you have any specific examples of what you would, include there?
Well, here's what's really cool for me. I'm a real estate broker in California. So one of the things that I put into every one of my deals is that I have to list it. And now I do give our partnership a really good deal on that commission. Like I might do it for 1% or something, but I want to control that listing because I'm the one that's comped the property. I know what I believe I can sell it for at the end. So I've already disclosed that to the seller up front. So I would say one thing I've learned from doing these joint ventures is that you want to disclose in advance what you believe the numbers will be at the end. And I know for a lot of people that makes them feel a little cautious or worried because they don't want to say, hey, I think this property is worth 400 and then it sells for 350. Their feeling is that they're going to have liability. But a lot of that can be avoided by, again, setting expectations up front. What I will do is I will sit down with that seller and show them all the comps and talk about the current market and say, hey, if we listed today, this is what we could probably sell it for. But when we get done with the work, we're going to look at these comps again. And then we're going to decide between the two of us a fair listing price. But in the joint venture, I might say we're going to try to list for as close to 400,000 as possible, unless there is a market change. And then, of course, that gives us leeway to have a situation where there's a difference in market between the beginning and the end.
Makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I think, I love that that creative strategy. I know you also talk about, instead of just purely wholesaling the property, you alluded to it a little bit earlier about the idea of kind of the fast flip, and how you advise real estate investors to think about that as an option for people as well. Can you maybe define that and give us a little bit of a playbook of what a fast flip would look like instead of a wholesale?
Yeah, and let me just say that a wholesale or fast flip
Mm-hmm.
is generally a different scenario than the joint venture that I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say that is that typically with a joint venture, what's the margin that you are creating is that you are taking a property that's worth one thing today, and then you're doing some work to it, just like you would with a regular flip, and you're making it worth more money down the road. And because you're creating this margin, in other words, you're creating equity, you're creating a situation where you can make some money and you can also give the seller more money than they would have made had they just sold the property to a wholesaler or to a flipper. Now, switching gears and going to what we were talking about earlier, a wholesale or a fast flip. And first, I think we should, as we kind of talked about earlier, maybe define a fast flip versus a wholesale deal. In my mind, a wholesale, a true wholesale, is anything that you purchase, do very little work to, maybe clean up a little bit, maybe do minor repairs, put it back on the market and sell it within 1 week. I would classify that as a wholesale, or what we might call a fast flip. But we have to understand that, because when you're out there talking to people, some people will say a wholesale is, held for 48 hours and you do nothing to it. Other people will say, man, they'll call me up and they'll go, Dave, I wholesaled this property. And I'll say, well, tell me about it. And they'll say, well, I bought it, I did all this work, and I sold it 45 days later. And I'll say, well, that's really not a wholesale deal. That's more of just a regular flip. So getting back to wholesalers, most wholesalers, and let me just interject first and ask you a question.
Yeah.
When the people that come to DealMachine, do you think that they are primarily wholesalers or primarily flippers?
We have a good mix. I mean, we have a good amount of people who are wholesaling, just because that's such a great kind of way to get into that first deal. But yeah, I mean, we have a good mix.
Okay, so what happens typically with wholesalers? And I've been, like I said, I've been fortunate to train thousands of people, teach thousands of people how to wholesale. And most wholesalers, the strategy that they use is they use some sort of marketing. Let's just say it's something like DealMachine. They're doing driving for dollars, which is a great way to start. And they're out there looking for deals. And as I said earlier, they find a deal, and then oftentimes what ends up happening, they either can't make the deal work, or even worse is that they have a willing seller, but because they're wholesaling, their time is limited, and they're trying to create this situation where they quickly get into contract with a seller, then they turn around and quickly find a buyer, and hopefully that buyer will pay a lot of money and enough to make them profit. And then they put the whole thing together and do the assignment, and they try to get to the close and make this money. We all know, if we've been wholesaling long enough, that sometimes things get in the way. Maybe you have a buyer, and I hear this all the time. Wholesalers will come to me and say, David, I'm under the gun. I need help. I had a flipper in contract. I had assigned my contract. They were going to buy the property, and they've backed out. They don't have the money anymore, or they now have cold feet. They don't want to do the deal anymore. And I only have 24 hours or 48 hours before I have to close my deal or work my magic with the seller. Otherwise, I'm going to lose this deal. So over the years, I've seen wholesalers literally lose hundreds of great deals because they couldn't make it work, we'll just say logistically. And so there's another way to do this. And by the way, a lot of people are worried about wholesaling being illegal or becoming illegal in certain states. I know here in California, it's frowned upon. I mean, even though we do it and it's allowed, there's a lot of controversy about wholesaling here in California. So let me just walk you through a scenario. Let's just say you're a new wholesaler. You go out there and you find a property where there's a great margin in it, and you're thinking, man, I would love to find a flipper to buy this. You might want to look at the opportunity of wholesaling this. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, well, David, I don't have any money. I don't have any money. I don't have any experience. How do I do this? Well, the good news is there are people like me with money and experience. And as much as I hate to say it, people like me are a dime a dozen. I mean, there's so many people like me that have money and have experience, and we're looking for ROI. We're looking for deals. And I do this with wholesalers, I mean, all the time. Wholesalers will call me up and say, hey, David, I think I've got a great deal. I think I could wholesale it and make a couple bucks. But if I could buy this property, clean it up just a little bit, I mean, literally, I think I can sell it for 30, 40, 50,000 more because I can put it on MLS or I have time to market it. And oftentimes what I'll do is I'll just jump in either as a financial partner or sometimes just a hard money lender. And going back to the part where we're talking about money, I generally in that situation, as long as I like the deal, I will put up 100% of the capital, meaning that wholesaler is able to, buy this property and take title and now have marketing time to either put it on MLS or take their time and sell it to the right buyer. And they're able to make that big spread in a few days, and it won't cost them anything as far as financing. And that to me is, if you're a wholesaler, where you should be pushing your business, because now you're getting away from worrying about the rules and legalities of wholesaling, and you're also on most deals making more money.
Yeah, and I I know you said that people like you are a dime a dozen. They're, you're irreplaceable, David. But besides that, looking for other ones, if you're raising private money in general, can you maybe talk a little bit more about that process and how to raise capital and how to find, those people, how to pitch them, that whole process?
I'm going to tell you the easiest way. This is going to be so simple. You're going to, if you're not already doing this, I'm going to tell you this, and you're going to think, why didn't I think of that? It's so simple. And I'll tell you, let me just back up. Even though I have money, and even though I pay cash for all the properties that I flip, and I also loan my money out, there are times when I'm broke. Because when you are a real estate investor, when you're using your capital, you're using it, which means that a lot of times most of your money is out. And then what happens when all of your money is out? You get a phone call from somebody that has the deal of the century. And we've all been in that situation, whether you're broke because you don't have money or you're broke like me because all my money is out. There are times when I get a phone call and I think, how am I going to raise 300,000 or 400,000 or 500,000 or $1 million? How am I going to raise it like that? Well, here's what I do. I'm lucky because I have a big network. So sometimes all I have to do is pick up the phone. But here's what I would do if I had no network. I simply would go to Google and I would type cash for homes near me, or cash for homes, or cash for ugly houses, whatever you want. Those types of keywords on Google. I can tell you I did that the other day in my area. Something like 300 people willing to loan money, willing to flip, popped up. All of these people give their names, their emails, their cell phones, because they want to be contacted. Yeah. And all you do is simply go down the list and take the top 10, 15, 20. And this works, I mean, literally no matter where you live. And you call these people up and you say, listen, I'm a wholesaler. Every once in a while, I find properties that I don't want to wholesale. I actually want to buy them, maybe do minor work and sell them in a week. I know you're a flipper. Would you ever be interested in partnering with me to do a deal like that? I can promise you a great ROI. Short-term return on your money, great ROI. I'm telling you, there is no flipper out there that has any common sense at all that would turn down that offer. They're going to say, absolutely. Next time you have a deal, call me up and let's go over the numbers. And
Hmm.
so all you do is the next time you have a deal and you know the numbers, you call them up and you say, I would like to partner on this deal, or I would just like to get the financing. I'm willing to do it really fast. I'm willing to give you a fair rate of return. We can discuss that. But here's what I need. I need good terms. I need you to put up all the capital. Now, if they say, no, 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 if I'm going to loan my capital, I got to have a 10% down payment. Say, okay, well, I appreciate that. When I find one of those deals, I will call you. Otherwise, I'm moving on.
Hmm.
Don't let people dictate the rules to you. If you have the property, you're in control, period. And I can tell you right now, there will be lots of people like me that are willing to put up all the money, because the risk on a flip buying it is not in the down payment they put down. I mean, that has nothing to do with my risk. My risk is how much I'm into it and what I believe it's worth. Nothing else matters, because at the end of the day, if I have to foreclose that property and get my money back, the equity in that property is all that matters. Whether
Hmm.
you put 10% down or 20 or 30 or 50 is irrelevant to me, because you could put a big down payment down on a bad investment and we still could lose money if we have to foreclose.
Yep. Yeah. I know you talk about when you said favorable terms and making sure that when you have the property, you dictate those terms. As a newbie, what when you say favorable terms, can you kind of define that for newbies? Like, what are all the things that you should be going in thinking about negotiating or thinking about trying to set in your favor?
Well, first thing is be confident.
Hmm.
A lot of I get called in. One of the things that I do a lot is I get called in a lot to negotiate deals. In other words, people call me up and they say, David, I've gotten to the point where I need to meet with the seller, I'm afraid that I'm going to get taken advantage of, or I'm not going to talk them down, and so I want you to come with me to negotiate the deal. So I kind of have become the go-to guy where I frequently accompany people and either negotiate the deal for them. And as much as I hate to admit this, oftentimes I'm doing that for free just to help people out, but I'm negotiating the deal for them, or I'm going in and partnering with them and negotiating. So the number one thing I would say is that sellers don't know this industry. Sellers, people that aren't that they're choosing not to use realtors, they're choosing to sell on their own or take a cash offer. These are people that generally are not experts in real estate. They're not experts in wholesaling or flipping. They don't know our industry. And so I always like to take them through the education process. In other words, when I sit down and negotiate, and I know this is sounding more like a advice on negotiation, but I think it's good because this is where you always end up.
Yeah.
Like no matter how you get there, eventually you have to negotiate with the seller. So I'm going to tell you exactly how I do this. And I have a very high success ratio. So what I do on every single deal is once I meet with the seller, I will go to the house, meet with the seller. I will spend 10 to 15 minutes walking through the property, just looking at it, observing in my mind, trying to think of what it needs. Again, 30,000-foot view here. I know it needs a remodel in the kitchen. I know the bathrooms need remodeled. I know it needs new flooring. I know it needs some landscaping, the roof possible. I get a ballpark idea in my mind of the type of work that it needs. Then, and this is very important, after I'm done with that, I approach the seller direct. I'll look at them and I'll smile and I'll say, I love this property. In other words, I want to put them in a good mood right from the beginning, where a lot of
Hmm.
flippers will start off with bad news. Well, I've looked at your house. It needs all of this work. It needs this. And they're trying to get the seller to give them a good price. I
Hmm.
do the exact opposite. I say to the seller, I love this house. This house would be the perfect flip for me if I can get it at the right price.
Hmm.
Now, in case you don't know how I work, I'm a flipper. I go out, I buy properties, I put a lot of money into those properties. I then have to spend money on marketing to sell them. I sometimes have carrying costs while I own it. I then have to pay commissions when I sell it. And so I need to have a profit. I don't do all of this for free. I do it for a profit. So my question to you is this: knowing everything I just told you, what do you want for this house? And the reason I give them all of that information in advance is I don't want them to go, oh, well, I'll give you 10 grand under the market, because I want them thinking, yeah, this guy's right. He's probably going to put 50 grand into it. Yeah, he's probably going to, have to spend 20 or 30 grand selling it.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't understand that, I'll actually walk them through the numbers. For instance, if they come back and we'll use the example we gave earlier, where maybe the property when it's fixed up will be worth 400, and maybe they've been looking at the comps and they're thinking, man, I really love 350. And so I say, what's the best price you can give me? And they say 350. Now, keep in mind, 350 might not be a bad deal to somebody who wants to buy it owner occupied.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that wants to buy it for themselves, do some work, and then live in the house. But if I'm a flipper or a wholesaler at 350, I mean, I might spend 30 grand in work and 20 grand in commissions and closing costs. So
Mm-hmm.
there's no money there. And so what I'm going to do politely and respectfully is that when they come back and say, well, gosh, Dave, I'd be willing to sell my house for 350. I'm just going to be brutally honest at that point. I'm going to say to them, 350,000 is a great price if I were buying this house to live in. And by the way, seller, you might be able to get 350 if you put this house on MLS and went through the whole work. Now, most flippers are afraid to say that. They're afraid to say to the seller that there's another option where they might make more money. But let me tell you something. In the years that I have been doing this, and I mean, I can say this in complete honesty, I have never once ever, and I do mean ever, had a seller take that option, even after I have tried to sell it to them. And the reason for that is that people aren't stupid. They already know they could call a realtor. Nobody is sitting in front of you in 2021 with a cell phone and the internet so stupid that they have no idea that realtors exist or that Zillow exists. They already know that. As a matter of fact, they've already looked at Zillow. They already know the comps. And so when you tell them the way you make the most money is to put it on MLS, you instantly have insane credibility.
Yep.
Because they realize you're not trying to take advantage of them. You're trying to work with them and find common ground. As soon as I say that, I will say, you can put it on MLS. That's where you're going to get the most money. At that point, you're going to pay commissions. You're going to deal with showings, and you may have to do some repairs, possibly. Or I've got a great option for you. Let's take out some of those cost of repairs that you're going to get lowballed. Let's take out those commissions. Let's take out a small amount of profit for me, and let me make you a solid offer that literally I'll have that money in your hands in the next 48 to 72 hours. You won't have to put it on MLS. You won't deal with showings. You won't do any repairs. You won't have to worry if the market changes. You'll just simply get all of your money and you're done. Most of the time, that strategy works. And I mean, it not only works, but it works better than I even want it to work. So, for example, I've tested this strategy where I might have been willing to, let's say, pay $300,000 for the house. But after I've been honest with them and given them a way to make more money, I then tell them about my situation and what I need to make it work for me. Let's say I'm willing to pay 300, but I want to see if they'll take 275 before I go to 3. I'm amazed at how many times I throw out that low number that will really make me a good profit, and the seller says, yes, I'll take it. Or they say, let me think about it, and within a couple hours to a day, I end up getting a phone call and they take the deal. So, and some people, the logic behind this, I get real estate agents especially, realtors are the worst for this. And by the way, I'm a real estate broker, I'm a licensed realtor, so I'm going to, talk down for a second about realtors, but it's only because I'm in that industry and I know it. Realtors will always say, well, those sellers are stupid. and I've had this happen so many times. I'm talking to a group of realtors, maybe at an event, and I'll tell them about this, and they'll go, well, the problem is they've just never met a good realtor. That if they met a good realtor, I would explain to them all of the pros and cons, and I would show them the comps of how much their house could be worth, and I would get that deal, and I would never take advantage of them like you do. And I'll say, well, wait a minute, I'm a real estate broker. And by the way, I've already given them the comps. I've already told them I'm willing to list their house if they want to sell it. I'm even willing to list it at a good commission. And you know what? They still don't care, because in 2021, people sell their houses for the same reason they did 30 years ago when I first got in the industry. They sell on terms. They have wants, they have needs, they have desires. And if their want is that they want to get their money quickly and they don't want to deal with any hassles, then yes, people will take $75,000 less. And I've seen it 100 times. They'll take that $75,000 less, knowing that they could potentially make that money and put it in their pocket. And 30 years ago, when I came in the industry, I would have never believed that. I would have said, nobody would pass up 25,000 or 50,000 or 75,000. Nobody would ever do that. But I'm telling you, 99.9% of the time, I see that is exactly what people do.
Yeah, that was phenomenal. I mean, I think, you're right in the fact that, like, hey, if you're educating them, if you're showing that you want to come to a win-win situation where you're helping their needs, their thing that's most important, and you're also, able to run your own business and make a profit at the same time, like, you're walking them through all of this transparently. You're showing that, hey, you're just building immense trust with them throughout the whole process. So I think that makes complete sense. I really appreciate your time, David. I mean, this has been great. One other question I had that I've heard you talk about before that I would love to hear your advice on this, but you talked about your getting rich strategy, and your advice on that basically being, hey, find something you love and become an expert at it and then scale that. Can you kind of talk a little bit about what you mean there and how to find that passion?
Well, you just stole all my thunder and took everything I was going to say. No, you're absolutely right. When I'm doing live events, and I think this probably has a little more power when you're in front of a crowd of like-minded people, but not like-minded, but people that are all there for they all want the same goal. They want to get into real estate investing, or they want to take their real estate investing to the next level, and they want to make more money. And so I learned a long time ago, and I've done this with multiple businesses and radio talk shows and my meetup group and everything. Find something you love, and if it's real estate investing, great. That's one of my loves. But so find something you love. That's a critical step number one, and you'll understand why in just a second. Then step number two is become an expert at it. That doesn't mean watch a couple of YouTube videos, talk to a couple of people, and then go out there. No, I mean become an expert at it. Like literally do it. Like, for instance, if you're a wholesaler, you love real estate, you love real estate wholesaling, become an expert at it. In other words, get into wholesaling, live it, breathe it, do it every day for 6 months or a year. Do deals, get out there and learn it. Watch every YouTube video from every wholesaler you can. Talk to everybody who's successful as a wholesaler. Spend 6 months to a year at least minimum. Once you are an expert, the next part is super simple, and that is just scale it. In other words, if you know from experience, your expert experience, that you can go out, and again, I'll go back to the DealMachine. You know that you can use DealMachine, and let's say that from your experience that for every $100 on DealMachine that you spend, you're going to get back 400 or 500. And your numbers could be totally different. But let's just say that from experience. And remember, you wouldn't know that until you had the experience. In other words, until you're an expert, you don't know that. But let's say that you learn yourself that, hey, I know from trial and error and marketing, if I use DealMachine, I go out and I try to find properties. For every $100 I spend, I make $400 to $500 profit. Well, now you can scale that. Now you can go, well, what happens if I'm willing to spend $10,000? And you might say, well, once again, Dave, I don't have $10,000. But I'll tell you what, if you came to me as a successful wholesaler and said, Dave, let me show you my stats. Let me show you my behind the scene. Every time I spend 100, I make 400. I would like to scale this up. Let me tell you something. I'm going to be falling over myself to partner with you, and want to put some money into that. Maybe not a lot at first, but try it out with you and see how it works. Because here's something where you've developed a skill because you're an expert and you're making a great ROI. Lots of people are going to want to be involved in that. Never worry about the money. If you're an expert at something and you have confidence and you know you can deliver, you can perform, the money will always follow, and there will always be people that want to put money in. Yeah. Look at Jeff Bezos with Amazon. The guy had no money whatsoever, operating in his garage. But as he started to prove himself, venture capital, and stock investors, everybody wanted to put money into him. And look where Amazon is now. Getting money has never been a problem for Jeff Bezos. It's never been a problem for a guy like Elon Musk, a guy like Bill Gates. The money is always there if you know what you're doing and you can sell people on what you can do.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great place to leave this too. So I really appreciate your time again today, David.
Thank you.
I highly recommend everybody checking out your YouTube channel. So I know flippingacademy.com. If you go there, it'll direct you to your YouTube channel. But is there any other way for people to get involved with you or get in touch with you, David, directly?
The YouTube channel is a great way. In all honesty, I haven't done a video in ages, but I'm getting that desire. I want to start doing more. Mm-hmm. I would. Out of all the things I can do, building a YouTube channel hasn't been my best one. I built like 900 subscribers right away. And then over the next 3 years, I think I gained 50 subscribers because I just didn't do what I should be doing. But I'm motivated and going to start back on this channel. So I would say go to flippingacademy.com. And if you're interested at all in what I might be putting out here in the future, subscribe to the channel, and I'd love to have you on board.
Yeah, and for anyone in Northern California as well, look up your meetup group. And like you said, I have over 3,000 members there, so quite a community as well. But awesome. Well, thanks again for your time. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Great, Matt. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and to everyone watching, this is Matt Camp with DealMachine, and happy deal finding.